O come, Emmanuel, and ransom captive Israel, that mourns in lowly exile here, until the Son of God appear. Hopefully we all know those are the words of the hymn of O Come, Emmanuel, that we sang as our opening hymn today. If you had to pick one song, one hymn that really captures the theme of Advent, it would be this hymn, O Come, Emmanuel. It really is sort of the anthem of Advent. Because it's the words of a people who are yearning and longing. It's the words of the people Israel in exile, banished from their beloved homeland, with a yearning and longing to return home. They're sitting in their homesickness, and this yearning and longing and waiting and expectation, waiting to be rescued, to be freed from exile, and so on. In Catholic theology, we sometimes talk about the tension between the already and the not yet. The already and the not yet. That in some ways, we experience the already. Already our Messiah has come. Already our Savior has come into the world. Already his salvation is broken into the world. Already his salvation and redemption is unfolding in our lives. Already we can encounter the Lord and have an experience of him and heaven here on earth. But there's also that dimension of the not yet. Not yet is the work of the Lord complete in us and in our lives and in the world. Not yet are we totally liberated from the works of evil and darkness at work in the world. Not yet are we in the fullness of everything that God desires for us. Not yet do we see God in the fullness of everything that he is in all his glory. And Advent is really a season where we enter into that not yet. Into that waiting. And we experience this not yet in various ways. Our experiences of feeling as captives, the things that hold us captive or bind us in our lives that we're waiting to be freed from. Whatever it is, perhaps it's the not yet, that's still waiting to be freed from whatever our addictions or vices are that bind us. Still waiting to get through whatever that struggle is that we're experiencing and facing. The not yet of a loved one fighting through some sort of illness or sickness. Whatever it is in our life. But even sometimes that can come in other ways, this tension, this yearning for a Savior. That even when things in our life objectively are going well and fine, sometimes there's still this experience that we still need to be rescued. That somehow this is not it yet. Everything that God intends for us. This sense that we need a Savior. There's a writer in a book I like, Sheldon Van Auken. And he wrote a book called A Severe Mercy, which is his memoirs of his own journey with his wife and their eventual conversion to Catholicism, to Christianity, I should say. But he talks about that even before their conversion experience to Christ, that he talks about this moment he had where he came home and his wife was distraught because she had this sense of her sins, even though he knew she had never done anything horrendous or horribly sinful or anything. But he looked at that experience as that they had this realization that played into their conversion of this need of a Savior. So here's what he writes. He comes home one day and he finds his wife and she's in tears. So he writes, "Her sins," she said, "had come out and paraded before her, ghastly in appearance and mocking in demeanor. But what sins? What could this eager, loving creature have committed? Not sins as the world counts sins. Not one person had she murdered, nor one gold coin stolen. No unfaithfulness, no secret drinking, no dishonesty, no sloth, no kicking dogs. But sometimes she had been grouchy or snappish. She had said cruel things to people, perhaps to her mother or brother. But now her words haunted her. Sin. She knew there was such a thing as plain sin, not something any psychiatrist could absolve or explain away. And even worse, the sins of omission. She was shaken to the depths, shaken as I had never known her to be. I knew that. I knew it had been a huge and dreadful experience. But how could I understand, I who had never known what that was like? So I held her and comforted her up against something I could not comprehend, but something I would help her fight. I know now, of course, that she had experienced the classical conviction of sin. Christianity knows all about it, but I didn't yet know all about Christianity. If I had actually understood what was happening, understood it as a spiritual process, I might have been wildly alarmed. Or again, if I had deeply understood, perhaps I shouldn't have been alarmed. But for deep understanding, I'd have to be a Christian. For the hound of heaven was after her, following her with an unwearied pace. So during this time, we enter into that yearning and longing, the need to be rescued. That's why we cry out, O come, Emmanuel. When I was a kid growing up, one of my favorite books was a children's book called The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe by C.S. Lewis. And this is a story, it's a fairy tale of these children who stumble into this magical land called Narnia. But this magical land has one horrible thing wrong. It's ruled by the White Witch, who makes it always winter but never Christmas. So the world always has this cold, icy grip about it. The cold and dread and despair about this land, but never the magic of Christmas allowed to break into the world. But the children encounter some of the local folks, specifically Mr. and Mrs. Beaver, who tell them, who whisper to them about hope that the people of Narnia are whispering, that the true king, the great lion Aslan, is on the move, that he's coming back to return to Narnia to set them free. So they have this great whisper of hope, the thrill of hope, that Aslan is on the move. So as we enter into this Advent season, our waiting and the not yet is not without hope. But we whisper that hope, that the Lord is coming. And you see, biblical hope is not merely optimism, simply looking at our circumstances and saying, how is this going to work out for the best? But biblical hope is saying, look at the mess we're in. I have no idea how we're going to get out of it, but I know that God has saved us before. I remember what God has done. And I know who God is. And I know the ways that he's carried me before in my own life. And so that's where I place my hope. I hope that when all seems lost, to know that all is not lost. That the icy grip of despair and darkness and death upon the world won't hold forever. Because the Lord is on the move. So during the season we say these words, O come, Emmanuel, and ransom captive Israel, that mourns in lowly exile here until the Son of God appear. So rejoice, rejoice, for Emmanuel shall come to thee, O Israel. Amen.